Good afternoon, everyone. Today is the memorial of Pope St. John Paul II. What a wonderful Holy Father we had in Pope St. John Paul II. Today, October 22nd, is the memorial of this great pontiff of the Catholic Church, this wonderful Polish bishop who became our Holy Father for the Universal Church. Indeed, we are still basking in the graces of his pontificate. So today, as the church celebrates his feast day, we here at St. Mary's had the wonderful Mass this morning, and we offered Mass in honor of Pope St. John Paul II. And our local high school is named after John Paul II, PJP, Pope John Paul. Isn't that nice? So around here, we're surrounded by the love of this saintly pontiff, Pope John Paul II. He has done a tremendous work for the church. First of all, his youth and vitality. Second of all, his love for God and our Blessed Mother. And third, him telling us not to be afraid, to put out into the deep, and to allow all that we are and all that we have be for God's honor and glory. You know, when I think about this saintly pontiff, I think about his own courageousness. I think about his preaching. I think about his outreach to many people, especially the young. I think of all of these things when I think of Pope St. John Paul II, and I'm so grateful that I was alive and I was able to meet him. Hey, Susan, why don't you turn around and show everybody that picture of me and Pope St. John Paul II when I went to Rome, that top shelf. Isn't that nice, everybody? You see me with the saintly pontiff. I'm in his personal library. That happened right after Mass. We had Mass with Pope John Paul II, and then afterwards, we went into his library. So we were in his private chapel, celebrated Mass, and guess what? I proclaimed the gospel that day. And then after Mass, we went into the library and he handed us all individual rosaries. Isn't that beautiful? So there he is, and that's with me and my friends, Father John Bonavita-Cola, and then next to him is Father Michael Henley, and you can't see the other person, it's Monsignor Michael McGee. So the four of us went to Rome, and we spent our vacation traveling Rome and Assisi and Florence, and we did so many different sites. We made pilgrimage to so many different sites. That was probably like maybe 2 years after my ordination. So anyway, as we look upon that beautiful, gifted, saintly Pope, we see what he really conveyed to us. The gospel of life and the splendor of truth. Do you remember that? He was saying that the gospel of life, we must promote a gospel of life in a culture of death. Because we're very much into a culture of death. Even the political wars now, they're fighting about whether, life begins at the first moment of conception, whether it's legal to terminate the pregnancy, but is another word to kill the baby. Whether or not we can do it at the very last minute before the baby is born. It's crazy. There's a culture of death here. There's really a culture of death that is permeating the world, and especially the US. There's not even a lot of babies being born in this world. There's a lot of contraception going on. I just tell you that because many people want to know why Catholic schools are closing. There's no babies to go to school. Why are there not many vocations to priesthood or sisters? There's no babies to go into the seminary or convent. Why are parishes closing? There's no people. After the older folks die off, are the young people going to Mass? Are they receiving the sacraments? I mean, I'm not trying to give you a dim view of all this. I'm just trying to give you a reality check. We can't do anything unless we have babies. Babies grow up, they go to school, they receive the sacraments, they join parishes, they either get married or join the convent or the priesthood. Well, that's not happening. That's not happening. We don't have the amount of children being born. The birth rate is plummeting because it's a culture of, when I say of death, I mean not only of abortion, but also that you're impeding life to go on. Back in the day, people would have minimum 3 children. Then they would sometimes have 4, 5, and 6. Today, 1, if that is enough. So I just have to tell you that all of this has an effect on everything else. So what I'm trying to say to you is, if we're not having children as a nation, then we're not going to supply the needed people in all those areas. So if the birth rate is down, do we need that many parishes? If the birth rate is down, do we need Catholic schools? If the birth rate is down, do we need the seminaries that we have? Or do we need to consolidate and put a couple together because the birth rate is down? We're not having babies anymore. And thus, it affects everything. Schools, parishes, convents, seminaries. I just want to tell you that because, as a priest, sometimes I get a little frustrated when people say, oh, they're closing another Catholic school, oh, they're closing another parish, oh, there's not enough priests. I say to myself, so have you ever encouraged your son or daughter to enter the priesthood or religious life? So there's no Catholic schools. Does your children, like you sent your kids to a Catholic school, do they send their kids to a Catholic school? Okay. That's a question. Are your kids registered in a Catholic parish? Do they go to Mass? Do your grandchildren go to Mass? And are they registered? All of that, we can't keep on placing blame on people. We have to understand the source. What's the source of all this? And the source is the birth rate is down. And that therefore there's not people. And if there's not people, baptisms are down. And if baptisms are down, then Catholic school or prep is down. And then if prep in Catholic school is down, first communions are down. And confirmations are down. And so are weddings. And so is parish life. So it all has a ripple effect, one onto the other. Now, what does this have to do with Pope St. John Paul II on his feast day, October 22nd? Well, because he always preached about a gospel of life. He did. He always preached about the gospel of life. To make sure that we respect life in all of its stages, from womb to tomb, and all the stages in between. To respect the elderly, to give them the proper care, to welcome the stranger, to care for the immigrant, to help them get processed so that they can join a country that has a lot to offer. But do it in the context of our system that tries to help people, to promote people who do good things. Try to avoid those situations where people are addicted to alcohol and drugs that destroy the gospel of life. Help them recover from their addictions. Oh, it goes on and it goes on and it goes on. But John Paul II was very clear about promotion of the gospel of life. What do we need to do? We need to really pray hard, to advocate for all human life, and to promote it, and to promote legislation into that wonderful gift of human life. Pretty soon we'll be voting, and we have to really vote with a formed conscience. Remember I always say that? We have to vote with a formed conscience. So I have to make sure my conscience is formed. Do I know the candidates? Do I know what they stand for? Do I know what they promote? Do I know what they're offering the American people? Because if I don't know, then how can my conscience be formed? So to protect the baby in the womb, the bishops of the United States says that's preeminent. That is preeminent, because you have to protect it there first. And then you continue on the whole journey of life from womb to tomb. So there's a lot of issues that I think both candidates sometimes are not getting it precisely right on the head. They're not hitting the nail right on the head. They're lacking. Isn't that the way with life in general? You got it right there, but you're lacking there. You got it right there, but you're lacking here. And then people are like, oh, what am I going to do now? Like, how do I sift all this out properly? Well, preeminently, the respect for human life in the womb of a mother. Preeminent good. We have to protect that. We have to look at all these other issues, because there's a lot of other issues that deal with pro-life. So I don't want you to think that pro-life is just about the baby in the womb. Now, that is very important. I'm not saying we should poo-poo that away. But as you know as well as I do, it's that as preeminent, and it's things all along this area. Because if we're to be pro-life, we are to have a seamless theology. What do I mean by that? Well, a seamless theology is that it's all together. It's pro-life in its entirety. We are pro-life in its entirety. Like, the church has to make a statement about human life from the first moment of conception. But the church has to make a statement on immigration. The church has to make a statement on poverty. The church has to make a statement on workers and the dignity of human labor. The church has to make a statement on human trafficking. The church has to make a statement on prostitution. The church has to make a statement on pornography. All of human life and how it affects the human person. So if we're to be pro-life, from womb to tomb. Now, you're not going to find, I don't think, a candidate who is 100%, 100%, 100%, 100%, 100% in line with the teachings of the church. But you and I have to find a candidate who best describes these teachings in his policy, his public policy that he is promoting and fighting for. And you have to pray and you have to vote. I know it's not an easy thing, but it should become very clear to you and to me which one has the values that are the values of the gospel of life, the gospel of humanity. Okay? So I just want to tell you about that, because John Paul pushed the whole idea of the gospel of life, to live in the splendor of the truth. Did you know he also said that? The splendor of truth. What is truth? Remember they spoke to Jesus, Pontius Pilate. What is truth? Now, what is truth? In John chapter 14, Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. What is truth? The gospel. What is truth? Jesus Christ. What is truth? The values of the gospel, the principles of the gospel, the way of life of the gospel. That is truth. We need to promote the splendor of truth and call it for what it is, even if it makes us uncomfortable. So I say all these things because of today's celebration of John Paul II and his beautiful and tireless fight for all of humanity, the gospel of life, the splendor of truth. And he told young people not to be afraid to promote what is good, just, and holy, without destroying, without looting, without hurting anyone or any property. He's telling young people to do that in his message. And I hope his legacy can continue on. I hope we're a people of peace, following the gospel of life and the splendor of truth. Now, I think I would be remiss if I did not mention to you the announcement yesterday that would seem to be made worldwide about Pope Francis's statement about civil unions. So I don't want you to be alarmed. I don't want you to be nervous. I don't want you to be afraid. I want you to take it in the context of what Pope Francis has said. First of all, let's talk about the LGBTQ community. Let's talk about them. First of all, we're reminded that there are brothers and our sisters. I'm speaking to you because they might be your sons and daughters. I'm speaking to you about your brother and your sister. I'm speaking to you about maybe your neighbor or your relative. They're part of our human family. They're part of our human family. And just because maybe you or I or your neighbor are not part of same-sex attraction or part of the LGBTQ community, doesn't mean that we are to condemn. It means that we have to love thy neighbor as thyself. Now, what does that mean, to love thy neighbor as thyself? Does that mean to give a green light for sin? No, it does not. It does mean that we are not to be accusatory of people. You know, we have a priest of this archdiocese who works solely with Courage International. And I don't know if you know Courage. Courage International is the spiritual base of helping people with same-sex attraction. It's called Courage. Isn't that beautiful? And they do it in a Catholic way, part of the Catholic faith, part of Catholic spirituality. These people who belong to the LGBTQ community want to know how they could live their Catholic faith. They struggle. They cry, they lament. They feel sometimes that they're going to go to hell because they seem that no one loves them. And why did God torture them with this kind of thinking, this kind of sexual orientation? Oh, it's a bigger issue than we think. And I think that many people think that it's a light switch. Okay, well, stop thinking that way. Turn it off. Well, it's like almost turning off another aspect of your life. That's only one aspect of their life. First of all, they're human. They're an American. They're Catholic. They might have same-sex attraction. They belong to, they're white, black, Asian, Filipino. It's like saying, okay, turn one of those things off. No, it's not as easy as you think. It is who they are, but not mix up who they are. It's part of who they are. Just like being an American, just like being white or black or Hispanic. I can't turn that off. I have to understand it. I have to grow into that understanding deeper and deeper. If I don't, then I'm going to be filled with much confusion in my life. A lot of suicides have happened, and God forbid we don't want that to happen. We don't want people to take their life because they feel hurt and they feel abused, they feel neglected, they feel ostracized. I, for one, am it saddens me, especially when I'm talking to somebody that has same-sex attraction. It saddens me because I could feel their hurt. I could feel the disappointment. I could feel the anxiety they have. So let's get back to Pope Francis yesterday. What was that statement? Well, first of all, it was part of his book, Francesco. It was not a decree. It was not a dogma. It was not a doctrine. It was not him speaking on the area of faith and morals. It was him reiterating what he said when he was the bishop of his former diocese. And he says that I still feel that way, even though I am Bishop of Rome and the Pope. I still feel that people with same-sex attraction should have some rights given to them because of the dignity of their human life. Because if they don't, then if they adopt a child, if they get sick, they won't be afforded anything of the basic rights that you and I are afforded. That is the issue. And he says, because of that, I think they should be able to have a civil union. Because if they don't, then the state will not be able to provide for them. Does that make it a little clearer to you? It was a humanitarian statement more than a Catholic Church stance on this issue. So no, I do not have permission to marry same-sex people. The Holy Father was not making that statement. There's a theology of a man and a woman still very strong in the Catholic Church, and the union between a man and a woman in holy matrimony, the sacrament. The Holy Father, Pope Francis, in his book, Francesco, was just making a comment about what he said when he was a bishop, before he became Pope. But he said, I still kind of believe this. I'm sorry. They deserve basic human rights like people of society get. Because if they don't, when this couple die, they don't have the same basic needs met. And they die like animals on a street. What happens if they adopt a child? What happens to them? What happens in other cases in their life? So he's not going to, he doesn't kick them in the teeth. He doesn't want to, and I don't think we should kick anybody in the teeth, whether they be of another race, another religion, or another way of life. Should we kick people in the teeth and say, get out of here? Should we call them names and say, you have no dignity? The Holy Father said to us yesterday, when it all came out, and it wasn't just yesterday he made the statement, so please get that clear. The Holy Father always said, everyone's a child of God, even the sinner, because that's why Jesus came. Now, I'm telling you that you could think of all these people. You could think of a horrible criminal who is straight. And then you could think of a member of the LGBT community who's not a criminal. Oh, because they're straight, we'll let them go. we have really classified certain groups of people according to race of who they are as far as their self-worth. We have classified groups of people of their sexual orientation, of who they are and their self-worth. We have classified people in their economic status for who they are and their self-worth. Whether we believe it or not, it's almost like we have been preconditioned because of how we have been raised by society. So the Holy Father is making a major statement on a humanitarian level and say, yeah, let them have a civil union, because at least they'll be taken care of and they'll not be thrown on the street. They'll have some basic needs met. So for instance, the same thing with like the homeless. Well, they're not baptized. They don't receive their first communion. They're not confirmed. Let's take care of them though. Let's take care of them. Just remember what Jesus says, the prostitutes and the tax collectors will be entering the kingdom of God before you, because they have converted. This is all part of the humanitarian effort of conversion. It always is. To know God, to love God, and to serve God in this life so we could be happy with Him in the next. I know it's a difficult topic, and I know the whole world went into a frenzy yesterday. I know. But I want you watching this to understand completely that the Holy Father did not make a doctrinal or a dogma statement. That he was not sitting on the chair of Peter. He was talking as a human being for humanity's sake. A humanity effort to help people, no matter who they are, right? No matter who you are, homeless, atheist, you belong to the LGBTQ community. Well, because you don't have these groups and these boxes that you fit into, you're kicked out and kicked right in the teeth. By who? People who think they're Christians? I want you to have a different understanding of this. At the same time, the Holy Father is not condoning the union of same-sex couples in a sacramental marriage or union. He was condoning the civil union of them for a particular purpose. I think most of us will agree with the Holy Father. But I want you to think of, all the other people who do not have same-sex attraction, that are adulterers, that are thieves, robbers, murderers, atheists, abusers. They have rights as a human being. The Holy Father says, so does this community have rights as human beings. And he says, I'm standing on what I said when I was a bishop, and what I'm standing on what I'm saying as, the Pope. I think they deserve basic rights. And if, in order to get basic rights, they should have a union, because then the society would afford them those basic rights. Okay, everybody, that was a heavy topic, wasn't it? But I wanted to talk to you about it because it's news. And I don't want to avoid the elephant in the room, because Father Bellopede doesn't do that. I hit the target when the target is presented to me. And I will talk to you about any topic. But I want to tell you the perspective that the Holy Father was gearing toward and announced but announced it in his book, Francesco, not as the dogma maker for the Universal Catholic Church. He was making it more of his humanitarian statement, and to care for people. So he was talking about like the Lutheran couple, the Episcopalian couple, the atheists who are same-sex couple, the Latter-day Saints same-sex couple, the Catholic same-sex couple. He was talking about a humanitarian understanding of taking care of people. Okay? I have a comparison or a little bit about that when the Pope Benedict talked about AIDS. I don't know if you remember this, when Pope Benedict was talking about how the pandemic of AIDS was spreading. He said during that pandemic that it wouldn't be morally offensive in that case to use a condom. I remember that. But you have to take it in the context. Do you see how people are all nuts about Pope Francis, about what he said? And then I remember about the pandemic of AIDS and Pope Benedict making a statement like that, humanitarian statement for the greater good. Anyway, something to think about. Please don't, when these things happen, or when you hear these statements being made, don't jump to conclusions. Ask your pastor. Ask a priest, a religious, someone who knows the faith. Ask them and say, Father, can you please explain to me? I'm very confused about what Pope Francis said. Does that mean that we're going to have, same-sex marriages in the church? Do you see what I mean? It gets, it's blown to pieces and blown so big that it's very confusing. So let's just remember that as we continue to journey on, and as we can continue to pray, not only for our own faith to be strong, but pray for Pope Francis, and also ask for the intercession of Pope St. John Paul II. Okay? Happy feast day, John Paul II. Bye, everybody.